And welcome to our second hour. This is Debbie Georgatos. Thank you so very much for tuning in. And I forgot to do my proper introduction of the leading ladies. I had a great introduction written out and I didn't do it. But in our second hour, I'm joined in a round table by two leading ladies. This week I have Jenny McGarry and Carrie Kellerman here. So my really short introduction, because we have Chelsey on the line, is we have these ladies on every week because we love talking truth and we love going back and forth and talking about all the issues facing America. But we have a guest with us tonight, and she's Chelsey Youman, and she's Chief of Staff and Counsel of First Liberty, formerly called Liberty Institute. Hi, Chelsey.
Hi, Debbie. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
Well, I'm so glad you're with us. And I will tell our listeners, Chelsey and I have I do a different radio show sometimes during the week. And I've been on this show with Chelsey, which is where I met her. And she's a young and just really dynamic lawyer. And she is working for First Liberty. And the case, this is, Chelsey, I think I mentioned to you in an email, this is a very short segment. It kind of ends before it starts almost. And so I just want to give you a chance to tell, what is this case all about in Georgia, involving this Dr. Eric Walsh, that First Liberty is now representing him?
Yes. This is definitely a case we want the nation to know about. It's something that can't go unspoken about. We have a doctor named Dr. Eric Walsh. He was hired by the state of Georgia to be one of their district health directors. He's a renowned physician in the country, had previously served two presidential administrations on their presidential advisory councils for HIV and AIDS. So he just has a lot of accolades on his resume. But after the state of Georgia hired him, Georgia officials asked him to submit sermons. He is a lay minister, used to be a lay minister for the Seventh-day Adventist Church. He submitted the sermons to the state of Georgia, and they divvied up his sermons. We have emails of this, assigned different sermons to be covered by different employees of the state. And they went line by line through his sermons, didn't like what they heard, and then proceeded to call him within 24 hours and fire him in a voicemail.
Wow. Okay, so this, be very clear for our listeners, these sermons, his work for his church had nothing to do with his job with the state of Georgia, right?
No, absolutely. It was actually out of California was where he was preaching. So he wasn't even in the state of Georgia at the time the sermons were preached. It was definitely something he did as a lay pastor on the side. And obviously it's a Title VII religious discrimination violation for anyone to be fired for something they do on the weekend or regarding their faith outside of work hours.
Hi, Chelsey. This is Carrie. I wanted to ask quickly, did Eric have a chance to say, when they asked for sermons, to say, no thanks?
Yes, he could have said no, but he thought, that this was going to be part of learning about him and what all he was about. They had done, for obviously working for the state, significant background checks, looked into some of his volunteer work. And so I think he thought that this had something to do with his background check.
Wow. I want to, without going to a lot of depth on his sermons, but is the main thing that you understand to be what the state of Georgia didn't like in his sermons relate to his views on marriage and traditional marriage?
Yes, that's what we perceive to be the issue. He spoke on a number of things: creationism, just views on the Sabbath, pop culture. He referenced Jay-Z and things of that nature. But the thing that we feel that they predominantly we found on the voicemail afterwards that they had issue with were his views on marriage, which, as we know, many faiths have views on and beliefs regarding human sexuality. It's not uncommon.
Oh, my gosh. Yes. In fact, this is part we'll probably be talking tonight. And the next segment after our break, too, is about how there's been such pressure within our culture that, I just think this, if you ask our listeners and you step back for a second, this is a state government thinking that everybody knows this is the wrong answer. You're not allowed to say that about marriage. And yet I would say probably the majority of Americans still think that's what marriage is. But somehow it has become a forbidden thing to even say.
Absolutely. And we found a lot of our clients actually have been fired for similar things like this. I think employers are so scared of kind of the corporate bullying that we've seen nationally in the limelight right now. They're so afraid of that they're erring on the other side and actually violating religious discrimination statutes, which are explicitly written down. But again, we've seen this before. We have models of other countries who have gone the route we're now going, legalizing same-sex marriage. Ultimately, in England, Australia, and Canada, we have seen major free speech implications and consequences from that. And it kind of is a natural segue to once a behavior and a belief is deemed to be wrong, then the speech that flows from that is also attacked.
Wow, we have 1 minute here before our break. Carrie had another quick thing.
Yeah, I just wanted to know in what way did they think his views outside of work would affect his work?
That's unclear to us. Obviously, we think illegal discrimination. They probably don't care that it affected his work. They were determined to fire him based on his beliefs. And he's actually worked on, as I said, the advisory committee for the president on HIV and AIDS. So it's really unclear. He has no history whatsoever that would have been affected.
We're speaking tonight, and we're going to ask her to hold on during the break to Chelsey Youman, who is the Chief of Staff and Counsel of First Liberty. And welcome back to Ladies Can We Talk. I am joined this evening by my leading lady buddies, Carrie Kellerman and Jenny McGarry. And we have on the line an attorney and just a brilliant young woman, Chelsey Youman. She is the Chief of Staff and Counsel of First Liberty, based here in Dallas, Texas, and which was also previously called Liberty Institute. And we're talking about a case in Georgia in which the state of Georgia fired a doctor who was a employee of the state who's an extremely accomplished man, and they fired him over the content of sermons he gave in his church, not related to his work in any way, but in his sermons he spoke about his support for traditional marriage and other conservative issues. And the state of Georgia openly, and they admit that's why they fired him. So Jenny had a thought here.
Yeah, Chelsey, I just was wondering, does the state of Georgia have civil service protection?
They do, and we actually filed this though in the federal court system, and so we have the Office of Civil Rights weighing in on this, and are definitely pursuing the Title VII route for this, which is religious discrimination forbidden in an employment setting.
But with civil service, they would normally have to follow some kind of progressive discipline before they could actually fire him, and he can also appeal to the Civil Service Council that they usually have. Is that another avenue that could be taken as far as this is concerned?
Right. So how these lawsuits typically work is you file the complaint with the state and then also with the EEOC, and then they'll do their own internal investigation and issue a right to sue letter, which is essentially your green light to go ahead and file the case. And sometimes they just issue the letter, and I can't get into too many details in this case, but sometimes they'll weigh in on their views of what happened. But the state of Georgia actually just is holding out, saying that they fired him for other reasons and things like that. But we have the actual video footage, or audio footage, I should say, of them laughing about why they fired him.
Oh my gosh.
That's
it's
crazy.
Terrible.
And I'm sure the
terrible.
governor has not responded to this. I believe he's a Democrat also.
We don't know what he is anymore. Let's just say that.
He's an unknown. Yeah. Well, I just love the idea that in this country, we have federal laws that Chelsey mentioned a moment ago, Title VII being among them, that are designed to protect people against legitimate claims of discrimination. They're tied to give a person who's actually a victim of discrimination a way to remedy it through the courts, a way to go through the courts and argue it. In Title VII, in my other life, before I did radio hosting, I was a lawyer and I actually represented employers in California, and definitely had federal court litigation under Title VII. So this is it's a powerful law present for those who really need it. And this seems like such a black and white case of discrimination. I just find it, I find it mind-boggling that Georgia is not trying to weasel its way out, because it just seems so egregious. And actually, this doctor, I know you mentioned, Chelsey, how accomplished he was, but I was reading about, this is Dr. Eric Walsh. Mm-hmm. He actually is director of Pasadena Public Health Department. He secured millions of dollars in grants to start an innovative, low-cost dental clinic for HIV-positive patients, low-income adults, and senior citizens. I mean, the guy's a do-gooder. Honestly,
yes. Yes. And the most ironic part of all is that it's all driven by his faith. I think his desire and passion to serve the poor and the sick in California right now, and then was going to be in Georgia, is driven and because of his beliefs.
It's amazing. Yep.
Chelsey, I wondered, on the other side of this, is there anything somebody can say under the umbrella of faith that would send up red flags, that would be something that somebody could legitimately be fired for?
No, that shouldn't actually be the case. So religious discrimination or any Title VII discrimination, which would be racial discrimination, discrimination on the basis of sex, all of those are prohibited 100%. And that could include anything from being disciplined by your employer to admonished by your employer or harassed by your employer to here we see worst case scenario actually terminated. The only context that I could think of where your religious beliefs, you're allowed to pray in your employment environment. You're allowed to put up Bible verses at your desk. You're allowed to talk about it, would be if it interfered with your actual work in a real sense. So if you were on air and said something that you weren't supposed to, that would be taken as being spoken of on your employer's behalf, that maybe could get you in trouble. But the point of this entire case is that you can't be fired for your religious beliefs. It's just not legal.
And, I have to say, I want to switch over and have time to talk about this case that I mentioned to you. I think, Chelsey, in an email before we got on, this case that actually has come out of the Fourth Circuit involving high schools and the assignment of bathrooms. I do want to get to that because I'm curious about your read on that. Did you just call me ma'am? Okay. I'm sorry, Chelsey.
I'm Southern. I've got those Southern values.
Yeah, okay. I'm Debbie. We have Carrie and Jenny here. No, but back to this Dr. Walsh case. I think that one of the underlying things, we talk on the show so much about preserving America and the goodness and greatness of America. Mm-hmm. Part of the idea of America is that we do actually embrace and support diversity of opinions, and people are allowed to think different things. You're not supposed to be punished because you don't hold the majority view or because you don't hold the left-wing view. And so that's one thing that's wrong with the state of Georgia's conduct. They're kind of saying only one view is allowed. But I think it's even more troublesome that the one view that is allowed apparently is that you embrace marriage as defined by the modern LGBT community instead of marriage as defined by your religion, by many people's faith, the Jewish faith, Christian faith, many faiths define marriage as a man and a woman. But that's a view apparently is not okay with Georgia. I just had to add that commentary. I don't know if you want to comment on that, but I want to turn to ask you about this. Did you want to respond to that, Chelsey?
I just would say I completely agree that we're definitely at a tipping point in our nation where millions and millions who hold traditional views of marriage, we get to decide who we're going to respect as a country, if there's allowed to even be a dialogue anymore.
Yes, it's very troublesome. Okay, I do want to get your opinion because you're practicing law. I don't practice law anymore. I got a better job as a full-time mom after that, and now I'm a radio host. But there's a case right now. It's out of the Fourth Circuit. So it's a federal appeals court under Title IX. Title IX is essentially a law that Congress passed years ago saying colleges had to essentially not discriminate between men and women. It had to be fair. I'm going to just leave it at that summary. So this case involves a high school student who is a biological girl. I mean, she is a girl. She identifies as a boy, and she wants to force the school to... She tried to say to the school that she should be able to use the male locker room, men's locker room, and men's restrooms. They said to her, we'll provide you a neutral bathroom. We'll have one for girls, one for boys, and a neutral one that you can use. And even that wasn't okay with her. So she filed suit. But what I'm blown away by and want to hear your reaction to is the federal court said essentially that she was right, that Title IX did not let the school meet her need by simply supplying her a neutral bathroom. Am I understanding the case correctly?
Yes, you are. And I would have to point out that this is such an important case because it's the first case to come out of this high of a court that rules this way. And it's very, frankly, unfortunate precedent-setting case out of the Fourth Circuit. We were obviously floored by this because, and again, I'm a First Amendment attorney, mostly freedom of religion and speech issues, but my understanding of Title IX is that there's specific exceptions allowed where people are or schools are allowed to delegate certain areas on the basis of sex, one of which is locker rooms, one of which is bathrooms. So there's already an explicit exemption, my understanding is, in Title IX for the way schools implement Title IX. And so to call essentially for the court to go explicitly against what Congress set out as an exemption and call the school discriminatory, which no doubt they did, is a bit absurd, but definitely against the explicit language of the statute.
Exactly. And, there was a dissent, as there always is. And again, to our listeners, I will put a link to this case on the Ladies Can We Talk Facebook page. If you're listening tonight, go to Ladies Can We Talk Facebook page. We have lots of dialogue going on. And to the website, ladiescanwetalk.org. And we'll post the link to this. There was, as there often are in cases like this, a very stinging dissent. This one was written by Judge Paul Niemeyer, who essentially said, you got to be kidding me. I mean, if you had to summarize, he really came down very hard on the majority, talking about things like, what about the privacy rights of the students, who do not wish to change in front of somebody or shower in front of somebody? What about their rights? It seems that we exalted the transgender students' rights over everybody else's. Do you have a thought on that? We have actually a full minute left here. Chelsey, any thought on that?
Well, yes, I completely agree. We do know that specifically in public bathrooms and bathrooms on campuses where a lot of sexual assault takes place. I think a high percentage of assaults take place in the bathroom, when we know that we've had plenty of witnesses testify before Congress and who had that as an experience say that going to a public restroom at all is a traumatic experience for them anymore. And to say we are willfully choosing to put that a gender interest over a privacy safety interest, it's frankly horrific.
It is. Chelsey, quickly, you can tell us the website for First Liberty.
Sure, we're firstliberty.org. You can look up all of our cases, including Dr. Walsh and more.
Chelsey Youman, thank you so much for joining us. It's Debbie Georgatos and Ladies Can We Talk.